Jason and Louise, and we're DS4. We'll also be joined during the year by Barty Garibaldi, who will be working with you on environmental matters and aspects of your projects. Also, Nat Mosley will be working with fabrication, material studies, and model making. This is the third year of DS4, and we've been working always in the area you can see on this kind of spoof newspaper we made. We call the Balkans, which is the area between Western Europe and Soviet Russia. It's fascinating to us because it's an area of post-socialist architectural and urban landscape, which is now in a rapid sort of process of change. It's also been the site of conflict and the site of currently all sorts of strange new investments and changes. We're drawn to the area because it's a microcosm. Where we'll be going in Sarajevo is a very clear, concentrated microcosm of many of the issues that most of the world addresses in terms of architecture, urbanism, politics, environment. And you'll actually be going to this site and meeting and engaging with some of the players. There are a few things I want to just introduce by saying is that the ethos of the studio is very much about collaboration. So we've assembled a team of people we'll be working with. When we go to Sarajevo, you'll be working alongside students from Stockholm and from Sarajevo Architecture School. We'll also be working again with Lorenzo Romito and the Stalker Group, who are a very, very sort of interesting group of architects and thinkers from Rome. And we're also working with local Bosnians, architects, artists, Sanada, who runs an NGO, who was our client last year. So the idea is to immerse you into a part of the world which is transitioning very quickly into an unknown, should we say. The key issue facing Sarajevo is probably identity and how to negotiate the sort of post-conflict areas with new architectures. Just a map, this is just showing you Bosnia, in case you don't know where it is. It's way to the southeast of Europe. It's not actually in the EU. We will be going there on the 29th of October. This is just a map to show you the kind of complexity of this one country we'll be visiting, which is essentially divided between Serbian Orthodox Christian and Muslim Bosnians and Catholic Croatians. And you can see the sort of both richness and sources of conflict and dialogue that happen in a place like this. This is the city at the moment. This is a view of the socialist aspect of the city. The city sits in this incredible topography of mountains, and it's developed along the river. So this is a moment in the 60s and 70s when it's laid out as a socialist city. This is another view, just more talking about the kind of history of the place, from an Ottoman medieval core to an Austro-Hungarian sort of city of institutions to the socialist period. And this Sarajevo was very famous for the 1984 Olympics, this is the opening ceremony, and all the buildings are still there in a state of decay. Nothing much has happened to them, and that's one of the sites we'll be looking at. This is the siege. Sarajevo is very famous for this very long siege. It's almost a 5-year siege where the Serbians completely surrounded the city and just decimated it in a very political way. They destroyed all the key monuments and public and cultural buildings. And this is obviously very much resonating with what's happening now. Although I have to say we're not really interested in what's known as ruin porn or dark tourism. I think we're looking for working with Bosnians at the moment into sort of future architectures. This is just a sort of imagery of what was happening in these amazing buildings. This was the Olympic Hotel. This is a building in central Sarajevo that were destroyed, targeted during the war. And this is more a sort of forensic study. During the war, the architects in the city, all that they could do was to actually document the damage to the buildings. So they put together this documentation mapping of the entire city and fled to France, where they put on this exhibition called Herbicide. That was the first time that word was used. And I just want to explain what a Sarajevo rose is, just so you get it. That's what we've called the project. These are mortar marks in the street, and wherever there were casualties, the holes have been filled and cast in with resin, with red resin. So as you walk through the city, you see these roses. I quite like the optimistic, turning something tragic into something to do with a flower. This is just a bigger picture of the city. The black represents buildings, so this is every building in the city. You can see the historic development, the 19th century development, the socialist development, and now on the edges all the new developments. So what's happening now is that Sarajevo has become an incredible investment point for Arab states, for Malaysian and Indonesian investors who are buying up the city and privatizing it. It's a sort of, everybody's been talking about neoliberalism. This is neoliberalism you can see. These are huge estates that have been carved out of the mountains, huge shopping malls that are happening in the centre. And this is a big debate, this is really troubling people in the city, and we want to situate our work within this debate.
I'm just going to talk about,
Jason.
Yes, sorry. I'll talk about, because there's obviously the dominance of the siege, but when we go there, we want you to think about other things. And these are just examples of sort of having been in Bosnia last year. There's many ingredients of the multi-layered culture, and it's part of our, maybe you're interested in advocacy, the cultural human histories, the topographical histories that build up to give you ingredients to make a project. This is just a shot from Bosnia, Mostar, of a building that has on these remnants of a culture called the Bogomils, which were a rare dualistic society that existed in Eastern Europe, which they still reference anyway. This is a fascinating photo because that is Sarajevo. It's famous for its fog, apparently, as you can see. But that actually is smog. So there's issues about beauty, how the smog creates this extraordinary situation, but these are things we might want to pick up on. We don't know yet. It's your project. That's the Olympics, which look like a war room. They're not. They were just abandoned. So there's these structures lying around the city that, again, are to be explored. This is something last year happened that's quite fascinating to us. There was Yugoslavia was not a Soviet state, it was a socialist state. And in that they tried to find a language to express through architecture a type of new meaning. And when you go there, it's quite an extraordinary place. Not to copy this, but to recognize the struggle that many of these architects went through. How do you express, through architecture, a meaning in the world? So there's weird monuments. This is a catalogue of some of the things that are dotted around the country. They're quite, they're just extraordinary. That's something we did go to last year, Mostar, which was Bogdan Bogdanovic, which is a fantastic name. But it was a Partisans memorial. So you can just see this is in Mostar facing down from the hill into the city, where they're trying to recognize their history, but actually more importantly, recognize their future, or build a language for. Other mad people, Vladislav Ritter, which one of the students got very interested in last year, which was a type of architect from the 60s. They're just, it's not Soviet, it's not Western, but it's almost its own language, own culture, which is not use that, it's just recognize and learn from that. Another one we haven't studied, but he was more influential in Sarajevo that we want to look in, who was actually looking at the old Ottoman, the old history, trying to combine that with modernism.
Okay, so this is a little bit about the methods of the studio. First, we really believe in engaging with the territory in a very literal way. So 2 years ago when we were in Estonia, we did a walk with 90 students in total with the Stalker group, and we walked 54 kilometers over 2 days from Tallinn to Jaga. And we were off-piste, we weren't following roads, we were walking, so I'll come back to that, we were walking just in straight lines across the landscape, and here you can see intrepid Oxford Brook students building a bridge so we could actually escape from the swamp we were in. This is the sort of methodology of Stalker, the way they analyse the territory of the city. So this is a study they did about 10 years, 15 years ago of Rome. Everything blue is actually vacant land. So this is really talking about the city as a fragment, many discrete fragments. And within the blue is a strange zone where homeless people live, migrants live, agriculture takes place. It's a way of understanding through mapping and engaging through walking the body. So we want to just show a few projects from students in the last 2 years. This is Kutsama, who found this extraordinary site just outside of Tallinn. It was an abandoned forced labour camp. So you can see the kind of prison to the left. When the labour stopped, the quarry, the mine, flooded with water. So she saw this huge body of water as a resource and as a site for her project, which was really about e-identity, about identity in the digital world, about server farms, and about a place where the global community could come and actually deposit memory, deposit thoughts. And she was very interested in a sort of technical way of looking at how water and also the material she worked with could diffuse the heat of the plant and actually create a different environment. So something very much embedded in our work is about material explanation and the forming of space as an outcome of that, together with narratives that we all ask you to look at. As with many people today, there's no brief as such. We're going to take you to a place, we're going to open your eyes to it, ask you to experience it, and then give you some tools through workshops so that you can develop your final 5th year project.
Okay, I'm going to talk, this is another aspect, I think we can't emphasize enough, this directness of engaging with architecture and how you work as designers. Just want to, this was a project I did with students years ago, building constructions in the Thames River in London to be, they were 5-hour structures to be flat.